Good morning and welcome back to the Price Style Podcast. Today I'm here with the North Bay's top apartment broker, Scott Gerber, who is a major authority on housing in the area. Scott, how are you today?
Doing great, thank you.
Awesome, good to hear it. So, how did you initially become involved in real estate in the North Bay?
Well, Dylan, I started in the apartment business kind of by accident in 1989 in Chicago. And my wife and I lived in San Francisco. We're trying to buy a home, or wanted to buy a home, and we realized that that wasn't really possible. And that was in 1989. So we moved to the city of Chicago. And I wasn't in the real estate business at that time, but I got introduced to a company that specialized in apartment brokerage in Chicago. So I started my real estate career in the Windy City in 1989. And in 1994, my wife and I had two children, and she is from Palo Alto, and we had to get back to her home stomping grounds. So we moved back to San Francisco in 94. So it's a little bit of an interesting story that relates to what we're talking about today, which is I had to leave the area in order to buy a house. I moved to Chicago. We bought a house for $129,500. We sold it 3 or 4 years later for $165,000. Had a little bit of equity. In 1994, the Bay Area was in a deep real estate recession, one of the deepest. And fortunately for us, we were able to buy a house because everything was on sale. And so I came to the Bay Area in 94 with 5 years of real estate experience and stepped right into a deep real estate recession.
So what would you say has changed from that time doing business in the housing industry and that time as to now? Like, what's the biggest change that you've seen in your career?
Well, lots has changed. Lots of things have changed, but, as in many things in life, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So real estate cycles are just that. Things are cyclical. We see the same sorts of events and circumstances repeat themselves. I've seen at least 3 real estate cycles in my 30-year real estate career. What's changed? Technology has changed in lots of different ways. Not just the actual technology that we use, but the fact that here in the Bay Area, this is also a job center for tech jobs. So technology is the thing that's changed. Jobs have changed. When I first started working in the North Bay, Sonoma County was a cheese and egg and agricultural place and some wine. It's changed. It's more diverse. Sonoma County is a pretty diverse job market now, much deeper, much more sophisticated. What hasn't changed is, until probably the 90s, we saw regular new housing construction, mostly in Sonoma County, some in Marin. And somehow, I think, primarily due to environmental constraints, Sonoma County started to clamp down on new development. It's a little bit of a departure of conversation, but one could argue that yes, there are environmental reasons, but those reasons might be a crutch for those that don't want new development, that are trying to stop new development. And so things like the tiger salamander in Sonoma County put a big crimp to the new housing industry. So that's changed. One of the economic sectors in Sonoma County used to be construction. And so for many years, 10 or 15 years, until we had these fires 2 years ago, there was no construction industry in Sonoma County. and there was very little construction. Of course, now we have some construction up there, and through the misfortune of these disasters, it's actually kick-started some new construction in Sonoma County, and they're starting to figure out how to build again, but not much here in Marin.
Yeah, we definitely haven't seen much here. So do you think that's the primary reason for unaffordability? Is that sort of the single reason that there hasn't been very much built? Or would you say it's sort of a combination of factors?
I like to be pretty specific. So different, the North Bay is made up of really Marin, Sonoma, and Napa counties, if you will, and a little bit Solano County. Marin County is different than Sonoma County. Marin County has geographic constraints to construction because of the landscape is mountains and water. So there's some limitations to where you can build. But what we realize now is that we certainly can build here, but we need to do it in high density areas and transportation corridors. So Sonoma County, on the other hand, has space to build, there is construction. When we get to it later, I guess I'll give you some examples of why that's good and why that's working. Examples in Sonoma County. But here in Marin County, we've got, as I say, we've got physical constraints because of the landscape, but we've also got political constraints because the folks that reside in Marin don't want anything new. It will only create more traffic and more people and so on and so forth. It'll be harder to get a cup of coffee at Pete's in the morning. So they seem to be against it, and the politicians aren't standing up to that, and they aren't saying, this is what is best for this community. This is what's best for the county. The politicians in Sonoma County right now, maybe after the fires, maybe that influenced their position, but they're much more aggressive about rebuilding.
So then these physical constraints and political constraints, do you think there's a solution to these problems? Do you think that it's time for the state to step in, or do you think that's intrusive and we can do it ourselves? What's your opinion on a lot of the recent attempts to solve this problem?
As you may know, there was a bill introduced a few years ago by a politician named Wiener, and there was a big backlash to that bill, and I believe that he did that to create a conversation, and now it's come back again late last year, early this year, with a revised version that coming down from the state that mandates high density development and transportation corridors. I think that's not only first of all, it's unfortunate that it's come to that, but I also believe that that's a good thing. I think it allows our local politicians, in some regard, since they seem not to have much of a spine and ability to say we need new housing, they can point to the state mandate and say, look, this is what we have to do. And it is not watered down, but it is a more, I think, sensitive version of the legislation that will cause us to loosen up and start creating some more housing. And we need it. We need it badly. We need it in Marin County. We need it in the two biggest cities here in Marin County, San Rafael and Novato. I've said to people that anyone that will listen, that I think we need to scrape downtown San Rafael and put up 6 to 7 story buildings, new office buildings, new apartment buildings. That city, we're trading off something that was charming 50 or 75 years ago. It's not charming. It's broken. It's old. It needs to be replaced.
So you spoke about San Rafael and Novato. These are cities that you say have done a poor job in dealing with the housing crisis. Are there places that you are familiar with that have actually done a good job and have been able to sort of like reduce this unaffordability?
Yes, I am. The example I'd like to give you, which is 20 minutes from here, is Petaluma. And I happen to own apartments in Petaluma, and I've done a lot of business in Petaluma. But I can tell you that by adding 300 to 500 new units in the last 12 to 18 months, what has happened is Petaluma has created market affordability, which is what we always have always believed in. And market forces have been around a long time and they work. Supply and demand, it's hard to argue with that. So in Petaluma today, you would find the very same apartment that you would have found 18 months ago will cost less money. So why is that? Well, there's a ripple effect. So brand new apartments that rent for $2,600 aren't necessarily the units that people that are looking for affordable units will move into, but folks at the top end of the rental market will move into those units, which will create a void below. People one step below them will move into those apartments and on down the line. And so at the lower end and the more affordable end of the apartment market, it creates vacancy, it creates availability, and it moderates rental pricing. And it's a very simple cause and effect.
Yeah, that's one of the largest complaints we run into is whenever there's a development, if it's a luxury development or something, people come out and they say, where are all the affordable units? Well, they don't understand that this will actually help to increase the supply, which will stabilize the cost anyway. And I think in Sonoma, if I'm not mistaken, you spoke about how construction has kind of returned to the area in a small way, and there's been some construction, especially I think in Rohnert Park has added a lot of homes. Have you seen this has this helped? Has this demonstrably helped outside of just Petaluma?
Absolutely. And one of the things I like to say is we don't have a housing crisis, we have a housing shortage. And so it is all about creating some stability by creating some supply. And so both in single family and in multifamily, it certainly has impacted Sonoma County. We see single-family home construction, but also the city of Rohnert Park will, once they get the State Farm campus approved and entitled, you'll see hundreds of new units built there, and that will moderate rental housing prices. So we'll see apartment rents flattening out, and we'll see vacancy grow to 4 or 5%, which is healthier than 1 or 2%.
Interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to that. So as young people, as people who are sort of entering this market, looking for places to rent, trying to live in the place that most of us grew up, what do you have any advice for us? What can we do to sort of live in this county and maybe afford a home one day?
Well, besides vote for politicians that are in favor of developing new housing, my advice to you is really kind of threefold. One is save your money. One is be patient. And the other is, and related to number two, is timing. When I was your age, I dreamt of owning a home, and that's why I moved to Chicago. I had a little bit of a more aggressive plan than most people might have. I remember driving around thinking, who are these people in these nice cars, and why do people own a house, but I can't afford one? And I never thought I would be able to, but through patience, perseverance, and timing, I was able to buy my first home and then my second home. We're at the top of a real estate cycle right now, Dylan, and these cycles they come and go. They peak, and then there's a valley. So wait for the valley, save your money, be patient, educate yourself, understand, go to open houses, understand what it takes to buy a house, get focused on what you need to do, get educated, and be patient. But that's okay, because while you're patient, you're learning and you're saving. And, not many years from now, you'll be looking at your mortgage statement in the mail, and, you'll own that house instead of renting that apartment or that house.
Great. Thank you so much for the advice. Hopefully, we can all take something from that. That was awesome. So thank you so much, Mr. Gerber, for coming in. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And
I did.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.